Hi, I'm Laura from Everyday Adventurous Images, and this is a video tutorial series on creating bespoke movement artwork with Snapseed. In the series, I'm going to share with you all of my hints, tips, and photo editing secrets on how to turn shots like these into works of movement art like these. So, how does it work? The series comprises of 8 video tutorials split into 3 parts. In the first part, creating your image, step-by-step guides will show you how to use Snapseed to stitch together your photos to create the 3 different types of movement images that I use most often: burst shots, shadow shots, and echo shots. In the second part, adding style, are 3 guides dedicated to using the looks and editing tools within Snapseed to create your own signature styles, including a dedicated guide to creating colour splash images. In the third part, Getting Technical, are 2 bonus guides which will help to make your photo editing life so much easier. These guides will enable you to consistently produce high-quality edits in a fraction of the time. This is Tutorial 3, Echo Shots. Create magical effects when stitching together your favourite burst photos. In this tutorial, I'll be showing you how I stitched together 3 shots from the running burst I took in my free guide, How to Take Brilliant Burst Photos, into an echo shot. And by following these simple, repeatable steps, you'll be able to create echo shots of your very own in just the same way. And the good news is that the process is really similar to how we create burst shots. So if you've completed that tutorial, then this one should be a piece of cake. So, first of all, what are echo shots? Some of my most creative shots are echo shots, but what exactly are they? Echo shots are stitched together bursts where some or all of the layers have a degree of transparency. In this way, the transparent images look like echoes of previous movements. It's a great tool for giving your shots perspective or for a really artistic, ethereal effect. So, let's get going. So what are those simple, repeatable steps? Step 1, choose our base image. Step 2, we use the double exposure tool to add each photo as a new layer with a level of transparency to enable us to get the echo effect. Step 3, we use the mask tool to paint in just the area of each photo that we want to include. And in step 4, I'll share my top tips for getting a professional finish for your images every single time. As for burst shots and shadow shots, step 1 is choosing your base image. So you've taken your burst shots and saved your favourites. Now what? You need to choose a shot to use as your base image. This will be the one onto which you stitch all your other photos. So, first, study your shots. I've decided to use 3 photos for my echo shot, but you can use as many as you like. Next, choose your base. If one of your images stands out as more complex than the others, maybe it's got a more complicated background or has, say, tree branches overlapping the shot, then it makes sense to choose that one as your base. Otherwise, I default to using the image where the subject is closest to the camera. So now you've made your choice, you can open Snapseed by tapping the icon on your home screen. And then once Snapseed is open, you can open your base image by tapping Open in the top left-hand corner. Then tap Open from Device to open up your phone photos. And locate your base image from your albums. I saved mine in an album called Burst, but yours will probably be in Recents. So tap to open it and tap to open your base image. Now we've chosen and opened up our base image, we can move on to step 2, using the double exposure tool to load up our second image, which will be our first echo. So, now we have our base image open in Snapseed, we want to bring in our second image. To do this, we select double exposure by tapping Tools at the bottom centre of your screen, then dragging the screen upwards with your finger until you find the double exposure icon, which you can then tap. This will open up the double exposure screen, and you'll see that the image icon at the bottom left is the only one of the 3 icons that is not greyed out. This is the icon that will load up your second image. Tap it, and then find and select your second image from Albums. Remember, mine is in my Burst album, but yours will probably be in Recents. When your second image opens, you'll see that it is overlaid on top of your first image. This allows you to check that both images are perfectly lined up. To line them up, gently drag the second image with your fingertip to sit perfectly on top of the first. Once the 2 shots are aligned, you can then tap the opacity icon. This allows you to set a degree of transparency for your shot to create the echo effect. In tutorial 1, Burst Shots, we set the opacity slider to 100%, whereas here, for the second photo in an echo shot, we want our shot to have an element of transparency, so I'm going to set the slider to around 70%. And that's about perfect. And then once we're done, we can just tap the Done tick. So now we've opened up our first 2 shots, we're on to step 3, using the mask tool to stitch them together. Now we're going to stitch in our first echo. So, tap the View Edits icon at the top of the screen, tap View Edits from the menu. This opens up a list of the edits we've made so far. As we've only made 1 edit so far, double exposure is the only edit in the list. So tap that one, and then tap the center icon, which is the mask icon, and is the key to stitching your images together. The mask icon allows us to paint in just the bits of the second image that we want to see. In this case, just the runner. So first we can check the exact position of the runner by tapping the invert icon, and again to revert back. And then I'm going to tap the eye icon so that you can see exactly where I'm painting on the screen. Then just paint with your fingertip, being sure to cover the whole of the runner, and then we can go ahead and neaten up the edges. To do this, we zoom in to get really close. Use the arrows to reduce the double exposure percentage from 100 to 0, and then use a fingertip to trace round the edges, erasing any of the red that's outside of the lines. You can pinch the screen to zoom out, tidy up any remaining areas that are still showing in red, and then when we're done, we can tap the Done tick and tap back at the top of your screen. Now we've stitched in our second image as an echo, it's time to go back to step 2 and use the double exposure tool again to load up our third image. So, just select double exposure again by tapping Tools, then dragging the tool menu upwards and tapping the double exposure icon. This opens the double exposure screen, and you can then tap the image icon and find your third image in Albums. Remember, mine is in the Burst album, but yours will probably be in Recents. When your third image appears, check that it lines up with the image underneath, and if not, gently move it on the screen with your fingertip until it lines up. Once the shots are aligned, you can then tap the opacity icon. This allows you to set a degree of transparency for your shot to create the echo effect. For my third image in an echo shot, I normally choose a lower percentage than the second image. Somewhere around 50% usually works quite well, and really gives the perspective of the runner moving through the frame. And once we're happy, we can tap the Done tick. So now we've loaded up our third and final echo image. We're back to step 3, using the mask tool again to stitch it together with our first and second shots. And we'll do this in exactly the same way we stitched in our second echo image. So, tap the View Edits icon at the top of the screen and tap View Edits from the menu. This opens up a list of the edits we've made so far. As you'll see, our latest double exposure edit is at the top of the list, so we can tap that one and then tap the mask icon in the centre. The mask icon allows us to paint in just the bits of the third image we want to see. So we can check the position of the runner by tapping the invert icon, and again to revert back. And then I'm going to tap the eye icon so you can see exactly where I'm painting on screen. And then just paint with your fingertip, being sure to cover the whole of the runner. Then we can zoom right in, use the arrows to reduce the double exposure percentage from 100 to 0. So that we can then trace around the outer edges of the runner to get as neat a finish as we can. You can then pinch the screen to zoom out, tidy up any areas that are still showing in red, and there we have our third and final echo image. And when we're done, we can just tap the Done tick and tap back. So now we've stitched together all of our echo shots, it's time to move on to step 4, getting a professional finish. So now we know how to stitch our echo photos together, and our image is looking pretty good. But how do we turn it from pretty good to awesome? How do we get that professional finish we want so we can share these images with confidence? Well, here are my top 4 tips for next level echo shots. Tip 1. Use the eye icon. As you know, I've used the eye icon a lot in this tutorial, as it's an easy way for me to show you exactly where I'm painting on the screen. But it's also a powerful tool for checking how neat your edges are, and this can make a huge difference to the quality of your finished image. So here's a little recap. As you've seen, we just tap the eye icon, which turns our paint area red, so we can see exactly where we've painted, and just how close we've managed to get to the edges of the runner. We can then zoom right in by pinching out on the screen with our thumb and fingertip and start to neaten up the edges. Remember that our double exposure percentage needs to be set at 0 to erase, so do a quick check and use the arrows to reduce it if not. Then just start neatening up the edges by brushing a fingertip as close to the outside lines as you can without actually touching the lines. Move your image around by dragging 2 fingertips across the screen. Try to stay just outside the lines as much as possible, but don't worry too much if you accidentally get too close to a line and touch it. We can tidy that up in my next top tip. Just a little bit more there to erase. And that's it done. Perfect. Tip 2 is to use the invert function, which highlights any areas of our echo that we've missed stitching in, or if we've accidentally gone over any of the lines whilst neatening them up. So, after we've used the eye icon to do our neatening up, we tap the invert icon at the bottom left of the screen and see what we've missed. So we can see we've got bits missing at the head, at the hands, and down at the feet. So if we tap the invert icon again, we can flip back to our image. And we're going to start at the head, so we can zoom right in by pinching out with our thumb and fingertips, and then tap invert again for a quick check of exactly where we need to focus. So right on the top of the head and around the face. We can then make sure that our double exposure percentage is set to 100 by tapping the arrows. And then we can very gently use our fingertip to brush those areas in, making sure that we stay as close within the lines as possible. We can tap invert again to make sure we've covered all the areas. And when we're happy with the head, we can drag with 2 fingers down the screen to the hands and arms. Just tap invert again to check exactly where we want to focus. And then very gently brush in just the missing bits. Can then drag across to the front hand. And we can see that it's the fingertips that we need to fill in here. So just gently brush in those missing fingertips, trying to stay within the lines as much as possible. Great. And then the same at the back foot. See, it's just the toes. We'll move the screen away from the navigation box, as we know we don't want to be touching that. Paint in those toes. There we go. And then drag right over to the front foot. Quick check. Ends of the toes again. Really gently tap those in. There we go. And pinch the screen to zoom out. And that's you done. Tip 3 is keep the shadows. Sometimes our echo images can look like they are floating in space rather than being grounded to the earth. One of the major reasons is that we haven't painted in the shadows. If we have a look at the shadows in this image, we can see that our base image on the right is grounded at the front foot with its shadow, whilst our echo image appears to be floating a little without its shadow. If we tap the invert icon, we can see exactly where the shadow should be and where we need to paint it in. So we can very gently brush with a fingertip as lightly as we can, just where we think it's needed. And that's it. That's all there is to it, to brushing in your shadows. Tip 4 is save and export. My final tip is around understanding the various save and export options within Snapseed. When we're completely happy with our image, we can then save, export, or share it. To do this, we simply tap Export at the bottom right of the screen, and the menu of export options appears. So at the top, we have Share and Open In. Both of these options allow us to directly share or open our image in other apps, which is great, but I prefer to save my image to Photos first, and then decide about sharing and posting on social media from there, so I don't use these options. Next up is Save. This option permanently saves our edited image over our original photo. I prefer to keep a copy of my original photos, as well as my edited versions, so again, I avoid this option. Then we have Save a Copy. This allows us to save a copy of our image with edits that we can undo, change, and redo. This is a great option if we want to work on the image again in the future, but it can be temperamental. Depending on the complexity of the edit, I sometimes get a "computer says no, photo not saved" message when trying to save in this format. Which brings me on to export. This option saves a permanent copy of your edited image into Photos, where your edits can't be changed, reverted, or overwritten. This is the option I use to save all of my finished edits. So once you've made your choice, just tap it. You'll see the app working away to save your edits, and you'll get confirmation when it's done. And that's it. Now you know how to create your very own echo shots by following my simple steps. Now you know exactly what we mean by echo shots, how to use the double exposure tool to add each photo as a new layer and vary the transparency, how to use the mask tool to stitch in each echo, and my top tips for getting a professional finish for your echo shots every single time. So, what next? Now you've completed the Echo Shots tutorial, you have all the know-how to create echo shots of your very own, and you've completed the first part of this tutorial series, creating your image. Now you can head on over to the Adding Style tutorials to discover the magic that using looks, tools, and Colour Splash can add to your images. Then what? Share your images on Instagram using the hashtag MoveSnappers. I'd love to see your echo shots, and I'll happily give you pointers on there too. And if you want my help creating bespoke images from your photos, just head on over to the website everydayadventurous.com/images to commission me to create your very own work of movement art. Bye for now, Move Snappers!